video right now is because I just went and got my hair cut. I do this every season. If you guys don't know, I don't know if I told you this, but I get my hair cut every season because my hair is very thick, and during the summer, especially during like dry heat, my hair tends to trap that heat on my neck, on the back of my neck, especially every night. My sister tried getting me to do long hair and it went down to my shoulders before I got sick of it and then started going back to pixie cuts again. So I just got my hair cut. I am just about to actually head back up to my place to get my backpack full of like a bunch of stuff and head over to my local cafe, which is actually a couple blocks away from where I live, which is also 2 blocks away from where I am literally right now. So I'm gonna go hang out at that cafe to write, and then when they close down, or like when they leave at like 4:30 or whatever, I will come back to the place and I will start packing up my kitchen finally. So I've been trying to do this on my days off, but when you've got a boyfriend who wants to spend time with you all the time, like, you rarely ever get a chance to do stuff that you actually like want to do or have to do. So yeah, so I am gonna do that, and I will see you guys back at my place when I am ready to pack. So I will see you guys later. this box right here is a donation box. Mostly full of books for like the library, but I also have some video games to an old console that I don't have use of anymore. Cause I'm basically getting a newer and up-to-date PlayStation. I'm getting the PlayStation 5 so I can play my favorite game, Monster Hunter. So I want to be able to play the newest Monster Hunter game. So there's that. Lots of updates. And I am, once again, almost out of boxes. So I might have to get more from my job. Which, if you ever work in food service, it's really helpful when you need boxes because everything comes in a cardboard box. So you can just break it down, set it off to the side, and, you know, like basically reserve it for you so you can have boxes instead of going out to the store and buying them and having to spend all that money getting boxes when you can just rely on your job. That is our, what does that say, V? Yeah, that's for our value size cups. And it doesn't have any like sides on there because I took them off. But I have a couple more like sitting right off to the side here. So I can put bigger stuff in there and like a bunch of my dishes and whatnot. So I might have to get more boxes just for more of the stuff. But I will have to see.